emergency for the first time in about...
This is Jim, and
Receiving this message. We are Ken Jennings and John Roderick. We speak to you from our present, which we can only assume is your distant past, the turbulent time that was the early 21st century.
Fearing the great cataclysm that will surely befall our civilization, we began this monumental reference of strange and obscure human knowledge. These recordings represent our attempt to compile and preserve wonders and esoterica that would otherwise be lost.
So whether you're listening from an advanced civilization or have just reinvented the technology to decrypt our transmissions, this is our legacy to you.
This is our time capsule. This is the Omnibus.
You have accessed entry 772.PR2516, certificate number 31531, the Megavitamin Craze.
The increased synthesis of collagen might strengthen normal tissues to a significant extent. Since then, a large amount of information has been gathered about the relation between intake of vitamin C and various aspects of the immune protective mechanisms.
Do you take vitamins?
I'm historically terrible at it. Like as a kid, I would take a chewable Flintstone vitamin.
Is it a thing you can be good at? Is it like a skill?
It requires remembering to do something once a day.
Oh, I see.
Which, in some parts of my life, I'm strong at. Remembering to shower once a day.
You shower once a day?
I do.
Oh, you're very... Yeah, I mean, you do
as a very clean person. Is that not the normal amount? I'm a very clean man.
You're a clean man, a clean old man. I think that showering once a day is a cultural thing that not everyone ascribes to.
I'm not saying people who don't are dirty, but what would you say is the average in the US? 9 showers a day.
I think it changes. I think it is a thing that goes in and out. Like in high school, I remember showering once a day being the minimum.
That's because you were smellier. High school boys are stinky.
It's true. But then there was in the 90s, I guess predictably, in the 90s, there was pushback on that, that your hair actually wanted some oil.
I actually did stop shampooing every day when I heard this.
Yeah. And
to this day, I'm kind of a not everyday shampooer. Is that correct?
I think so.
Am I doing this right?
I think that's right. And I think that your natural oils are like the oils on a farm egg, a farm fresh egg. If you wash them off, then the egg spoils faster.
Do you mean mine in particular, or do you mean everybody's?
I think everybody's.
Oh, okay.
My brother has chickens, and he brought me a dozen eggs that were unwashed, and he said, these will last on the countertop for 2 months or something.
Because they slide out of the chicken with nature's own
preservative. And yesterday, I was making the last 3 eggs, and I cracked an egg on the bowl, and then I turned the egg over or the shell over, and there was a feather stuck to it. And I was like, you either stuck this here with glue to prove a point, or these eggs are truly filthy.
It's, that's one thing I'm good at remembering to do once a day.
Yeah.
What
else? You brush your teeth?
Give my wife a kiss on the cheek.
Yeah. Eat your lunch and dinner.
Watch a movie. But I'm not great at remembering to floss once a day.
Sure, that's hard.
That kind of becomes more of it's been a day or 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And I would say that taking a multivitamin, I have not been good at. But this year has been such a dreary Seattle winter, even by the gloomy standards of our part of the country, John.
Yeah.
Have you seen the numbers? Like the UW does solar radiation measurements, and this is the darkest winter since they started keeping records.
Really? I did not know that, because I have spent some dark winters in Seattle, but a lot of those are self-imposed.
Yeah. I mean, they can't, there's no score that they can attach to the psychological darkness of the winter. It's not the Dostoevsky scale.
But we're getting less sun this year than in recorded memory.
Just cloud cover, all those rain systems that keep coming up from the more tropical parts of the Pacific. It's been a rainy winter.
Oh, it has, with all of the atmospheric rivers. Woof.
I like a good river, but keep them out of the atmosphere. In my opinion, keep them on the ground between banks.
You know what? I think that's an uncontroversial take.
Thank you.
So are you taking vitamin D or some kind of sunshine medicine?
I'm taking vitamin D. I mean, sunshine medicine is maybe what mommy calls her little drinky.
Right.
And I'm not, for religious reasons, I can't take any of that.
Sure. But you're taking D, because my doctor also recommended for people in the Northwest a little vitamin D.
And you should be doing that anyway. Like even in the sunniest possible winter here, I think at noon, the sun is at an angle where your skin just doesn't care.
Yeah.
Like you get like 8 minutes of sunshine at a high enough angle.
Well, maybe if you don't shower every day, maybe your skin is more receptive to vitamin D.
I need to get rid of all that goop so that the D sinks in.
Oh, I see what you're saying. No, I think
give me the D. I yell to the sun.
D's vitamins. So no, I think it's the opposite. I think that the goop, the goop that builds up on you, actually is a refracting agent.
It's like a magnifying glass killing an ant. It's just beaming D into my pores.
Sometimes at this time of year, I'll be driving and the sun at midday will be up just high enough to be right in my eyes.
Yeah.
And
noon.
You can't put your visors down in any combination that will block it. And I'm just like, this is inhumane.
Like it's why we're all Ingmar Bergman level misanthropes and depressives.
Right.
We're living on a little sad Scandinavian island.
So as your own parts of the country burn or flood or freeze or all three, in fact, as our show is beamed around the world, the only people that are listening that are like, well, we've got it made are the people in New Zealand, where all the American billionaires are moving.
It is kind of the Puget Sound of the Southern Hemisphere, I think.
But you take no other medications, right? You don't have any, because you're in perfect health and have 20/10 vision, you don't take any medicine.
I'm RoboCop, basically.
Yeah.
I don't have a daily thing of pills with the initials of the days of the week yet.
Yeah.
Sure it's coming. As a kid, I always took a Flintstones multivitamin.
Sure.
And I liked that weird chalky sorbitol taste.
That's nice stuff.
It's good, right?
Yeah.
Like to this day, I'll eat a candy that kind of tastes like that, and I'll be like, how is an artificial sweetener this good? This is so good.
Like bottle caps? Where do you find a candy?
The backs of stamps. No, like I take a chewable. Here's a thing I sometimes take. I'll take a little chewable melatonin.
Oh, to go to sleep
before bed. Like if I'm trying to go to bed earlier than my body thinks I should, probably because I stayed up too late the night before or something.
Well, I was doing a little research into melatonin, and it actually applies to this episode. Apparently, melatonin is a stronger medicine than we give it credit for, and you should not take it all the time. Like, it isn't a thing that you should take every night for a year. You're supposed to take it, and if it works, take it for a period and then get off of it.
That's what they told us when our kid had insomnia, and I had not considered that. But I take a small dosage, and because I don't take it very often, it really seems to work. Like, really? I can cure jet lag with it. If I fly to Europe, I just stay up all day, pop a melatonin at 9 p.m., and I will fall asleep right away and not even wake up in the middle of the night.
No kidding.
It's magic.
The only time I ever tried it, I was also, I didn't find it effective, but I think I was also doing cocaine. So it was like not helping. It wasn't enough.
You put it in the meth to get that great blue Breaking Bad color. Anyway, the ones I've taken are chewable, and they taste just like a Bayer aspirin in 1976, but like the sweet side of the aspirin, not the white side that actually had the medicine.
Right.
The pink side that had the sorbitol or whatever. And I'm just like, this is so good. Like, this is better than a sweet tart.
How do you feel about children's grape flavored Robitussin?
I kind of like that too.
I like it too.
I kind of like it.
Reminds me of my youth.
I'm going to use that to make some kind of amazing purple meth.
Yeah, actually. That's right. Purple meth.
But the thing about Flintstones vitamins is they were problematic for many years because they would have Dino, they would have the car, but they would not have Betty Rubble.
Oh, Betty, the best of all of them.
There was only one woman in the whole jar.
It was Wilma.
They picked machines over Betty Rubble. I think they've recently, I'm a father of of daughters. I'm a husband of a woman and a son of a mother.
Sure.
I'm great. I'm a great ally to all these causes.
I know you are. You're a super ally to mothers.
Love them all. Love all the moms. Not yours though.
No.
I'm not setting up a joke here.
No. That's right. You don't love my mom, but you love my mom.
I love your mom. But I think Flintstone vitamins now are feminist approved and have Wilma and Betty.
Good. Betty Rubble was the proto Jane Weedland for me. She may have been the first woman with short dark hair that I ever fell in love with.
That explains my Wilma. I think she must have been my Belinda Carlisle.
She was your Belinda Carlisle.
Except I preferred Betty also. That's a lie. That's revisionist history.
We've established that you're a Belinda and I'm a Jane.
You're a Jane.
Yeah. I started taking medicine a few years ago, as we've probably discussed, like grown-up medicine, like old man medicine.
Creaky man medicine.
Creaky man medicine. And then I had to get a little pill box. And, of course, that set me on a course to try and find a cool vintage pillbox with little glass doors.
Yeah, I love your Third Reich pillbox. It's so good.
And so because I'd have the same problem that you did, I never took a vitamin or any kind of supplement because, like anything, I could do it for 3 days, but on the fourth day I would forget about it. And
then it would never happen again.
Every time I try to wear a watch, I put it on, I'm like, oh, I should wear watches. Like, that's a kind of jewelry. And I wear it for 3 days, and then I take it off to take a bath, and I never put it back on again. But now that I was taking medicine that I needed, I had this pill box, and so I said, well, now why not put some other things in that pill box? If I'm taking it every day, why not also take some of these quack medicines that are popular among San Francisco billionaires who think they're going to live forever?
Oh, really? You're just putting weird concentrated kale pills?
Well, no. When I was dating my San Francisco tech girlfriend a few years ago, she had fallen into taking this medicine called Elysium, which is NAD+.
This sounds like it's from a science fiction movie, and it's gonna
100%.
It sends you to the Matrix or something.
It's one of these. They advertised it because they had like 9 or maybe 19 Nobel laureates who all were like, "This is the greatest medicine in the world." We've all been working apparently in some treehouse on this stuff, and it'll make you live forever. And then it turns out that 11 of those Nobel laureates were just cornered on a bus somewhere by somebody that was like, "I'll give you $1 million if you put your name on this."
How many of them were economics? That's what I want to know. I know how much you hate the so-called Nobel Prize for economics.
Well, the Nobel Prize will figure into our episode today too.
It will.
But I started to take this medicine, and then I was like, well, why not take this other medicine? And then I'll take a multivitamin, and I'll take this, and I'll put in extra D for myself. And now I take a huge handful of pills.
Just randomly.
It's a giant set of pills.
You go to the bulk bin at the supermarket.
No, but in college, I did have a friend whose father was a pharmacist, and he worked in the summers doing inventory for his father. And any pill that had a, like a mind-altering or otherwise like downers, uppers, whatever he could find, he would always kind of scoop a handful into this giant pickle jar that he had. And then he would bring it to college, and on some weekends he would shake up this pickle jar, and we would reach in blindly and take any 3. And most of the time, it was this crazy, like, wow, one of them was a muscle relaxant, and one of them was speed, and one of them was a downer, and you'd have this kind of John Belushi night. But every once in a while, you'd get 3
in a row, like a slot machine?
You'd get like
ka-ching, ka-ching,
3
ka-ching.
downers, and then you were really in trouble. It was bad a couple of times for me, bad.
I don't want to be
Random
controversial
drugs.
Here, John, but I'm not sure that guy should have been working in a pharmacy.
Well, he was the son of he might even be the pharmacist now for all we know. But it was the 80s, Ken. Things were a lot different. It was very punk rock.
Yeah, I guess it depends on where you were in the 80s.
So I guess that's
you
right.
could be super coked up if you were.
Yeah, you were
had a
at
different
a scout
job in the
camp and
80s.
probably not taking 3 random pills out of a pickle jar.
No, I wouldn't do anything randomly.
No, that's right. Even now.
That's the devil's work. That's like a tarot reading.
Sure, chaos belongs to the devil.
I don't even like add salt to taste. I'm like, listen, buddy. How many tablespoons do you...
My wife put in enough salt when she was making it. It doesn't need extra
This
salt.
actually will happen at our house where, like, you know, if Mindy's making dinner, she'll serve something and, you know, often it'll be in discrete parts because we have at least one picky eater, usually sometimes two.
Sure, I've had several of those meals at your
if
house.
my oldest son is there. The salad can't have cheese because of my oldest. The salad can't have bacon bits because of, you know, so it's all assemble it yourself. And I'll just be like, okay, does this go on the bed of rice or is the rice a side? Does the cilantro go on the vegetable or is that for the, you know, meat? And, you know, and she's always like, well, just do whatever you want.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, no.
No. Give me some order, babe.
I need to be told what to do with the cilantro. I need like a
order?
dom-sub relationship with the cilantro. Like, do not leave me like trying to figure this out myself.
Well, in doing research for this show, I learned something about multivitamins that I was not prepared for because I just taken an off-the-shelf multivitamin that has all of your USDA recommended.
Sure, it seems easy. There's a
Shim
formula.
Sham, Glim Glam. But when I was growing up in the 1970s, my dad, who was a sensible man, became enamored with the idea, the very, very popular idea that mega doses of vitamin C, you know, like way, way over the recommended daily allowance, 3,000 milligrams, or 3 grams, as we say, was a cure for the common cold. And it was a shorthand. Vitamin C is a cure for the common cold of a kind of, I guess what I think of now as a proto-alternative medicine kind of popularity in the United States. That if you were hip enough to the new way, that you were prepared to take that you had even heard of, let alone were prepared to take a vitamin that was off-label.
Can your brain take this much vitamin pill?
Well, and that although scientists were pretty clear that there was no real evidence for vitamin C.
Your dad was aware of this part?
There was also, this was the very beginning of there's no evidence that it isn't. And you know, scientists are divided on the question. In fact, scientists weren't really divided on the question. But there was one scientist in particular who was like a popular hero on the level of Einstein, a scientist by the name of Linus Pauling, who was a mid-century superstar in America in particular, but globally, a superstar chemist who had made advances in chemistry that even still he's regarded as, I mean, his papers and his books are still cited in scientific papers to this day.
I mean, even just taking high school chemistry, you know, learning how molecular orbitals worked, you know, atomic orbitals, like you would see his name.
Right.
He was,
I mean, he wrote the textbook of general chemistry, and a book that's, I mean, astonishingly, right? Because a book of physics written in 1940 would, I mean, there are so many advances that have happened in physics that you wouldn't necessarily think of that book as I mean, you wouldn't still teach it, right? You wouldn't teach Einstein's theory without a lot of asterisks now. But Linus Pauling
holds up. You listen to that first record? It holds up. He's talking about ionic and covalent bonds, and you're like, damn, this is the stuff.
Well, and his book, The Nature of the Chemical Bond, is the book that still is a standard textbook. And what he discovered, I mean, he was kind of the progenitor of quantum chemistry. He, up until that point, the question of ionic or covalent bonds was seen as a sort of a binary choice. And he discovered that, well, ionic and covalent bonds kind of operate in a quantum state.
It's a spectrum, man. Like
Yeah.
you see the right good-looking molecule, and you'll be like, "Well, I thought I was mostly covalent, but maybe I'm a little bit,
I feel
ionic after these quaaludes."
So he won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1954 when he was still in his 50s, and became like a public figure. And he had been invited by Oppenheimer. He was a Caltech guy, actually born in Oregon.
Oh, I didn't know that. Portland.
He'd been invited to be part of the Manhattan Project and had declined initially because he just didn't want to travel to Los Alamos. But and a lot of this was in a relationship with his wife, who played a large role in his activism. After the war, he became very active in anti-nuclear, initially like science, and then protests.
Disarmament, like he's a disarmament guy.
And part of that wave of scientists that came out and said, wait, this is immoral. As science people, we recognize this is, a no-win situation. He was part of the sort of experimental science crew that determined that fallout was actually kind of pervasive. It entered into the food chain. Cows ate the grass and their milk became radioactive. There was a study called the Baby Tooth Survey where they went and asked children to send in their baby teeth when they fell out, and they would get, a food stamp or whatever in return, or a gold star.
Linus Pauling is the tooth fairy?
He's not. He was part of this study. He didn't initiate it.
I see.
But they could, they started to do it in early enough in the 50s that their initial sample of baby teeth was from kids that had not been exposed to that much radiation, and they continued to do the baby tooth survey all the way into the 60s, and they could see this incredible increase in the amount of
isotopes adding up.
Yeah, just strontium or whatever that are in baby teeth, such that kids that were born in the 60s, like me or you,
I'm half strontium.
You 70s. Yeah, right. I mean, we were just.
That's why I don't take a vitamin. I'm like, my skeleton's entirely strontium at this point.
Right, absolutely irradiated, and so he became also a peace activist and leveraged his celebrity as a scientist and Nobel Prize winner to be part of the disarmament and part of and ultimately like anti-war.
That was a kind of global celebrity then.
Yeah.
Like some of them, Sakharov types, that writers, poets, scientists. This seemed very urgent at the time, and rightly so.
Yeah, and so much so that he was awarded a second Nobel Prize, this time the Nobel Peace Prize. And he won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1962, which, of course, was the absolute height of the Cold War, Cuban Missile Crisis,
the Peace Prize is often timely, right? Like, this is the issue that's getting headlines. Here's somebody who's on the right side of the issue. Yeah.
Like, for instance, Obama's Peace Prize.
For example, that one.
Right away kind of seemed like, interesting. Not really a thing.
What did he do? Did he create like is there like a new stamp with like the Mercury astronauts on it? What has he done yet?
He's kind of just, he's just there. He's a handsome guy. But he won the Peace Prize, and in winning it, he became the only person that's won only one of two. Marie Curie, also the other, who won two unshared Nobel Prizes. And wait a minute, I think Marie Curie's first prize was
shared with her husband.
So he's the only Nobel Prize winner who's won two unshared prizes.
But Curie won in two different, like Pauling won in two different categories.
Right.
And they're both like real categories, not just like
economics,
the flaky piece of economics ones. No, we love the Nobel Peace Prize.
There are two other scientists who have won multiple Nobel Prizes, and in their cases, in the same field.
Yeah, John Bardeen, the transistor guy. Oh yeah, he won again for superconductivity stuff.
That's right.
And then Sanger Sanger is the insulin guy, is that right?
Insulin guy.
Although Canadians have some other guy that they prefer, right? Canadians are all like, we have Frederick Banting, he's our insulin guy.
Well, and this is
this is 30 years later. Sanger sequences the amino acids. Okay, sorry, Canada.
There's even a case to be made that that Pauling was probably due nominations for or Nobel Prizes in half a dozen other directions in science. He was a true polymath. He actually got really close to identifying the nature of DNA and did a lot of the work toward it, but didn't, in the end, he didn't put the pieces together.
He had
like
his wife wanted him to go out to a march, and he was like, "But I'm so honey."
Yeah, they were standing around, and he didn't go He's got
a beaker and a dropper, and
but by the 60s and by the late 60s, by the Vietnam War, he had become a public figure, world renowned and known, as much for his peace activism as for his chemistry, but of course the one bolstered the other. And, unlike a lot of scientists, his work in chemistry, he continued it. He continued doing chemical work alongside, and molecular biology alongside his peace work.
He was still doing research.
And still doing pioneering research. And his work had never been surpassed, or it was never discredited. It laid the foundation, and he continued doing real work in it. But kind of in a star-crossed moment, by the mid 60s, he had become not only globally recognized, but also pretty controversial. This was a time when being a peace activist sort of morphed from being a scientist who was advocating against nuclear weapons to being a communist sympathizer.
He's a peacenik, right?
He's a peacenik.
There's a political element to it now.
Even though he's now a man in his 60s, he's lumped in with Timothy Leary as kind of a person that, he was actually awarded the Lenin Prize at one point, which, sort of discredits him with a certain cadre.
Is taking a lot of vitamin C compatible with Marxism? We'll have to find out.
That's a question we still don't know the answer to. But throughout the 60s, he started all his molecular work and all of his biochemical work, he started to synthesize it into like an overarching theory of human health. And it was initially kind of an attempt to explain mental health issues as deficiencies in certain sort of molecular relationships. And I'm not going to try and explain the science to you. I'm not some Ken Jennings that's going to sit here and talk about theoretical math.
I am an expert in almost nothing.
This is
and that's why I don't get into chemistry on this show.
This is a layperson's show, and I'm talking about the phenomenon of Linus Pauling.
Please send in your own editions, and when you do, frame them as corrections to John's moral failings, because he will enjoy that.
But he started to coalesce this overarching theory. And, we love overarching theories. We're always trying to find a unified field theory here, or a theory of everything.
Absolutely.
And his new idea he called orthomolecular medicine, which was a kind of general sense that that better living through chemistry. It's just better living not through Agent Orange, but better living through managing your chemical makeup as a way of healing disease, improving mental acuity, etc.
And that's kind of getting into a new agey area, even though he's framing it in a scientific way, right? That every disease, whether psychological or physical or whatever, is the result of some kind of chemical deficiency, and you just got to take the right fish oil, right?
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of that is I mean, he's just trying to get, at this point early on, just optimal health by recognizing what is the best, how do you get the exact right amount of everything you need? And it's part of an era where we're, for the first time, recognizing that we are composed of all these chemical reactions. Things are the result of at a molecular level. He's someone who devised the initial science. So it's not outrageous that he would be thinking about how this science could affect us dramatically and personally, intimately, right? I mean, if you think about Isaac Newton, he was the father of science, but he also devoted 30 years of his research to alchemy.
He wanted to make gold from lead so bad.
Yeah,
that guy.
And he's looking for the philosopher's stone, and he's, the father of what we think of as scientific method, but also like.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't have optics and calculus without him, and yet.
And it's partly a result of initially kind of being part of the initial understanding of metallurgy and chemistry.
That's the kind of stuff that a scientific mind would have been working in, and
right.
His genius in that field gives you mechanics, but he wouldn't have seen it that way.
The key to the scientific method and to being a scientist seems not to be that you are always right. It's the opposite. You're wrong all the time. It's to be a good scientist is only to have the ability to admit that you're wrong, to discover for yourself through testing that your idea was wrong, or to acknowledge the work of other scientists and say, I'm wrong. And it's time to move on to either doing this work according to the new information or redirecting my energy to something else. Linus Pauling had this star-crossed encounter with a man by the name of Irwin Stone, who was not a doctor, but had done some research into vitamin C, ascorbic acid, as a preservative. He was the one of the people, a chemist, that had discovered that, you could use ascorbic acid as a food preservative.
Its nutritional qualities were already known, right? Like sailors have been sucking on limes and pickles for a few centuries.
Yeah, it was discovered back in 1747 by a scientist named James Lind that in trying to solve the scurvy problem, which had killed 2 million sailors over the centuries, he discovered that really the only thing that kept scurvy out of them was sucking on lemons and oranges. So it was understood, and the vitamin C was only kind of vitamin C was only isolated in the 1920s. So it was one of these compounds that was like, well, let's try this on everything. Let's see what it does. Vitamin's
mostly a 20th century set of discoveries.
100%.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, 19th century, there are a couple, but.
You'd think this would be like, you might assume this would be, lore going back centuries, that, these are the things that are in kale. It just seems so foundational. Kale's good at this and carrots are good at that. In fact, prior to molecular biology, there was no way to know how that stuff worked.
And a lot of that was a lot of that research and also just sort of like general casting about of theories was all happening not just in the 1920s, but into the 1970s. And this is all part of it. Linus Pauling ends up communicating with Irwin Stone, and Irwin Stone, with his vitamin C head trippery, convinces Linus Pauling that megadoses of vitamins will help cure the common cold. And the theory is this, right? That in the mitochondrial transformation of food into energy, basically food into energy. It's a process of oxidation.
Okay.
And what that produces is free radicals.
You don't want those.
Free radicals you don't want, because they're flying around in your body, and they're capable of hurting other DNA in your body.
They can
and other
attach
cells
to anything.
Yeah, and
by their nature, and they'll make trouble.
They make trouble, and they can screw up. And vitamin C is in this category of antioxidants that will suppress free radicals. And so this is actual science and chemistry.
But those are real chemical reactions.
And the idea that free radicals loose in the body were creating weakness and ultimately cancer.
Moral weakness,
food weakness. Vitamin C was seen to be a way to defeat free radicals. But interestingly, most animals in the animal kingdom produce their own vitamin C as part of their chemical natures. And humanoids, that's not actually the term we use, primates, and humans specifically, have lost that ability to manufacture vitamin C.
Thanks, evolution.
As part of their native health.
You have to wonder what the upside was that let the vitamin C-less humans propagate more freely. They're more sexual somehow.
Yeah, it was. The trade-off was that we can play cornhole on college campuses, or we learned. I don't know.
But somehow the same chromosome that helps your liver make vitamin C just makes you unappealing to the opposite sex or something.
Interesting.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I remember reading once about. I was wondering. So if seafaring peoples just die without limes and pickles, what the heck? Like, how come Eskimo and Inuit people aren't just dropping in the kayak?
Right.
And it turns out polar bear liver is very rich in vitamin C. So they were eating these animal livers from animals that could produce their own vitamin C and doing great as long as you eat enough organ meat, I guess.
Delicious polar bear liver.
So all those British privateers, they didn't have to be bringing limes aboard. They didn't have to have briny barrels of stuff.
No, they just needed to eat more.
Just find a sea lion,
musk ox,
and eat the worst tasting part of it.
So Irwin Stone's theory was that our lack of ability to metabolize vitamin C created a condition he called hypoascorbemia.
That he made up.
Which meant that by his reckoning, we were all walking around with a kind of subclinical level of scurvy. And we needed to have these massive doses of vitamin C
up our citrus game,
just to get us to a baseline. Linus Pauling took a bunch of vitamin C as an experiment after having this conversation, and according to him, felt lively and healthy, and it banished the common cold in him, and he became a real advocate of this therapy. Now, unfortunately, his experiences of it were all anecdotal.
Right. I feel great after I drink this is not what the FDA wants to hear.
He immediately began, he claimed now whenever he felt bad that it was just allergies, that he had really mastered the common cold. And over the course of his, his new devotion to this idea, began to feel like ascorbic acid. Is that really how I'm going to pronounce that? Yeah, ascorbate.
Do you pronounce the first C? I've never had to say it out loud enough to know.
Ascorbate? Is it ascorbate or ascorbate?
The dictionary's not helping me.
I believe my dad said ascorbate. I
feel like I've always heard it with the first C.
Yeah.
Silent? But maybe not, because it's from ascorbutic. It's the opposite of scorbic things.
It's ascorbic.
So maybe ascorbic is right. Yeah.
Ascorbic.
Here's a dictionary that has it as ascorbic. There you go. I've been saying it wrong when I say ascorbic.
Well, so he becomes an advocate of this, and in 1971, Pauling writes Vitamin C and the Common Cold, which becomes a best-selling book advocating for megadoses of vitamin C. Now, immediately other scientists begin to do clinical trials to see if this amazing thing might be true. You take the free radicals out, and maybe a cure for cancer is as simple as that. But unfortunately, none of the clinical trials can confirm really in any way that megadoses of vitamin C have this effect.
Does this discourage Linus Pauling at all, or does he stick with the good vibes he gets from them?
Well, this is a sad thing that happens to a lot of great thinkers. They become kind of enamored with their reputations. I think they become arrogant.
If someone as great as me had this thought,
2
it must
Nobel
be
Prizes,
correct.
and also look at all the work I've done.
Yeah.
And so he took the scientific community's failure to endorse his thinking as a personal affront. He became indignant. He severed relationships with people, and he doubled and tripled down on vitamin C megadosing, and it became a phenomenon. Vitamin sales went through the roof. People were no longer taking 100 milligrams. They were taking 5 grams, 15 grams. I mean, Linus Pauling upped his dose all the way to 18,000 milligrams he was taking at one point.
Sure, because if a little bit is good.
If a little bit is good.
Do I remember right that vitamin C is one of the water-soluble vitamins, and therefore it's not going to like build up in your organs,
Well,
right?
so this is kind of one of the ways in which it passes muster, right? You do, in a lot of cases, a lot of the mega vitamins you take, you just pee it out.
Right.
Some of them, that's not true. Some of them.
That's where Tang comes from, in fact.
Yeah. Well, it comes
Tang
from
is-
astronauts.
Tang is just astronauts peeing out vitamin C into their little suit tanks.
And then flushing it out into space, and it hybridizes whole
It
planets.
falls to Earth and makes Tang.
He sparks off what becomes the nutritional supplement industry, and his orthomolecular doctrine becomes kind of a scientific backstop for all of New Age medicine. There are still lots of clinics and lots of treatment centers that use that terminology.
Follow his principles.
Yeah, and still are able to say, like, our alternative medicine is endorsed by 2-time Nobel Prize winner Linus Pauling, because he never disavowed it and continued to fight all the way through the 90s. Now, sadly, his wife, who was a major inspiration to him and a big part of his peace work, and he said at the time that he felt like she should have shared the Nobel Prize with him.
Oh, she was like a collaborator.
Yeah. Unfortunately, she died of stomach cancer in 1980. So you would think of many of the things, if the whole scientific community stacking up against you, it wouldn't be enough. Your own wife, who presumably is megadosing on vitamin C, dying of stomach cancer, would dissuade you from thinking it was a...
That's when he says, clearly she didn't take enough. If she'd been up to 18,000 grams a day sooner, or 18,000 milligrams a day. Let me ask you this. I have some vague memory as a Gen X kid of having the general idea that, like, orange juice was actually good for a cold.
Yeah, think about emergency. Have you ever taken emergency as a cold remedy?
I guess, yeah. I just had this idea that, that's what you need.
Yeah.
Your body craves orange juice when you're sick. And I guess that's not even true. It's just an offshoot of Pauling's kind of pop science.
100%. All that stuff. Orange juice when you're sick, emergency, which now comes in 22 flavors. And, I've taken emergency for a cold, because you kind of, when you get a common cold, you're just casting about for anything. Apparently, the research shows that vitamin C is mildly effective in the sense that it will reduce the length of a common cold by 10%.
Oh, interesting.
So, if you have a cold that lasts 5 days, if you take vitamin C, it will last 10 hours less.
But there is this whole industry, you're right now, of going in a grocery store and seeing a bunch of things that purport to fight or cure the common cold, but are not actually scientific or FDA tested remedies in any way. Like, there was this one my sister-in-law always took. She's like, oh, if you have a cold, you have to take this. And she gives me this thing, and I assume it's, Tylenol or sinus something. And it's just, it says, like, invented by a teacher on it. And I'm like, oh, well, if a fourth grade teacher invented,
social studies teacher.
and I think the idea is, well, who gets more colds than a teacher? Like, I get it.
Oh, I see.
But I don't necessarily want social studies teachers inventing my medicine cabinet. I'm fine if that's Bayer or,
Yeah, if
GlaxoSmithKline,
if there are
some evil big pharma company, that's fine with me.
people in white coats that are doing the inventing.
And then people were taking mega doses of zinc for colds, and it was like taking away their sense of smell. Do you remember this?
No, but zinc is, it's troubling to take mega doses of it.
If we stop making pennies, we're just going to be giving more and more zinc to our sniffly kids.
Exactly. When I was a kid, my dad would always put a 1943 penny under my tongue whenever I got sick. Well, even weirder. First of all, vitamin C and megadosing vitamins became a global phenomenon. It's still very popular in Europe. You take these all kinds of tinctures and mega doses of vitamin C.
There's whole retail chains in this country kind of based on this principle.
It became, that business, the vitamin supplement business has exploded in recent years and even more so during the pandemic. It's now a $40 billion industry. As the research progressed, in fact, it was discovered that people that took mega doses of vitamins were actually dying earlier and dying in worse ways. Aggressive cancers.
Cement truck.
Yeah, that's right. Getting hit by an anvil or a dropped piano.
Boxing glove on a spring.
And one of the conclusions of all that research was that free radicals also are out there free radical attacking bad things like cancer. And
so we shouldn't be demonizing free radicals.
That's the thing. They're like a certain...
They're equal opportunity attackers.
Having free radicals and having a balance of ascorbic acid that you get from fruit and other ways you find it in nature, the antioxidants and the hydrogen peroxides are in there fighting it out. And in fact, eliminating free radicals...
We all have two wolves inside us.
Yeah, that just lets the bad stuff flourish.
Did your dad believe in this stuff his whole life?
No.
Oh.
Dad just, he
heard about at
he
work.
also joined EST. This stuff was still popularized into the 90s. In 1992, a Time magazine article, a Time magazine cover story called "The Real Power of Vitamins," basically reported very credulously all of the things Linus Pauling was still saying into the 90s.
Because this was early enough that...
And just sort of popularizing the alternative medicine universe, which expanded out. At the end, Linus Pauling had a list of basically all disease that he believed megadosing vitamin C and other things was the cure for, including AIDS and cancer and halitosis.
It is funny how when these people have a one-size-fits-all thing, even the new diseases, they're like, good news, I've already got the cure for it.
Yeah.
Right here.
And that's the problem with all sort of one-size-fits-all solutions, right? But this article that was written by Anastasia Tonfexis.
Sounds made up, but okay. Is she a space alien?
She's not. She's a Time magazine writer.
From Venus, probably.
But it exploded in the popular... It was the best-selling issue of Time in a long time, and played a very measurable role in the explosion of interest in the 90s in megavitamins and high doses of vitamins.
I remember seeing Pauling on TV as a kid. And so hearing of him first for his vitamin obsession, before I knew, and it would say Nobel Prize winner Linus Pauling, and you
would think it
the
was
assumption
about
I got
the
as a kid was, he'd won Nobel Prize for all this orange juice he was drinking. And I remember just seeing, he was everywhere. He'd show up on Donahue and he would lecture the crowd how he hadn't had a cold in 20 years. And I remember my dad catching wind of it and just saying, oh, Linus Pauling. And maybe some of it was like, he's the peacenik, maybe this is Republican dad versus Democratic dad. But my dad was very much like, he is the exact definition of somebody who should have stayed in his field, you know?
Right.
Like,
although he was, he operated across many fields in science too.
Plus, the vitamin stuff is totally adjacent to his molecular biology work.
Right.
But But, you know, to my dad, this was the worst kind of hokum. Like whatever it was, something about this pseudoscience rubbed him wrong. And so we had lots of anti-Linus Pauling tirades at my house.
Yeah, I think my dad drew the line at chiropractic. That was the point at which he jumped off the alternative medicine train.
I mean, if you jump off the train, you do need chiropractic, though.
What later research suggested, Linus Pauling fought against the medical community for a long time, and in one profound way, he believed that intravenous vitamin C was effective, whereas oral, vitamin C taken by mouth was not, because the body was only capable of processing X amount of vitamin C.
Right. The stomach is the bottleneck.
Right. Whereas intravenous vitamin C goes right into the blood and has all of these profound effects.
Was my man shooting up Sunny D?
He was. And he said all of these chemical trials failed to appreciate that this needed to be, at least at first, an intravenous intervention. Lately, much later research starts to suggest that intravenous vitamin C actually does have an effect against disease, but in the opposite way from what Linus Pauling was speculating. It does not act as an antioxidant in the blood in high concentrations. It actually metabolizes as hydrogen peroxide. And goes as a free radical facilitator, and those free radicals then attack cancer and attack disease. It's the opposite of trying to eliminate free radicals. It actually promotes free radicals as an agent of destruction. Now, it's also damaging good DNA, but kind of in the same way that chemotherapy works. It hurts. It injures you, but it injures the bad stuff.
So we shouldn't all be taking it, or it's an anti-cancer treatment. But we shouldn't be taking it as a preventative, So what the research suggests is all vitamin supplements in excess of what you get in food, in the end, seem to promote disease. The research seems to indicate that if you take excess of these vitamins, you're just imbalancing what was a process that was working. I guess that makes sense. The evolutionary processes that created our metabolism would have optimized for the dietary availability of all this stuff.
So we're
optimized for what we would get from eating leaves and meat, the normal amount.
One of the most interesting articles I read about this was, a pretty cool, pretty rigorous science article that was written in a magazine of a religious magazine that examines science and tries to get it to square with the biblical story of creation. And so this whole article was really well written and really comprehensive.
And then you realized it was the Watchtower?
Well, and then at the very end, there was a sentence or two where they were like, it just goes to show that God's perfect creation had us doing just fine without all this crazy intervention.
Wow. So Linus Pauling is the Antichrist.
In some ways.
That's Pauling. And that concludes the Megavitamin craze. If only it would. If only it would conclude the craze, John.
Well, and I'm sure there are going to be lots of people that respond to this show by saying, no, you are completely wrong. And megadosing zinc is the only reason that I ever survived my bout of depression.
I eat 26 cents a day in pennies. Entry 772.PR2516, certificate number 31531, in the omnibus. As we often remind you, we were at Ken Jennings and at John Roderick on social media at the time. We were not on Facebook, but the Futurelings were, often criticizing our bad science and whiskey distilling skills.
That's right.
So you can look for them if you have scientific complaints. In your era, presumably, your body chemistry may be different, but your science is much more advanced.
You want to think, unless our listeners are sentient mushrooms, in which case they're going to have a whole different idea about whether they want mushrooms to spread in your body.
Any culture sufficiently advanced to listen to podcasts probably has vitamin supplement stores in their strip malls.
Yeah,
next to the karate gym and the Little Caesars. What did I not say? You could email us at theomnibusproject@gmail.com. We received actual physical mail, which I'm going to open now. This is addressed to you, John, and it's the shape of a record album, maybe? Do you think?
Okay.
I don't know.
It's probably somebody that's like, hey, listen to my record.
Do you get vinyl records from...
I got one the other day.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
It says do not bend, so that's how you know it's a really good record.
Is it a really good record? Is it a number one record?
Oh, wow.
Is it Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass?
Is Herb Alpert adjacent? Is there an explanatory note of any kind? I don't see one. This is from Todd, and he wanted you to have this.
Whoa, that's beautiful. It's Alaska, featuring Harry Simone. Oh, the Harry Simeone Chorale, music composed by Elizabeth Firestone Willis.
Is she a beloved Alaska composer?
Well, let me just describe the cover of this record, which is mostly
pretty good.
Pink and purple. It has a young, beautiful model dressed problematically in a what would be an Inuit fur-lined jacket, sitting on a brown bearskin, wearing mukluks, in front of a wolf, a kayak, a seal, snowshoes, and a totem pole that was clearly made for the tourist trade.
It's like the Jimi Hendrix Are You Experienced cover, but with more aquatic mammals.
Oh my goodness. And it's published on Alaska Airlines record label.
No. Do you think Alaska Airlines still has a record label?
I had no idea they had their own record label. But yeah, they're Alaska Airlines, and they're advertising themselves as the home of the Golden Nugget Jets.
I didn't even know before they had Russell Wilson, they had Golden Nugget Jets.
And this record appears never to have been played. So,
well, you'll have to tell me how it is. We also got a note from Steve, who says he's in recovery from all his other addictions.
Mm-hmm.
He name checks a few, some legal, some not, but he says he needs at least one addiction, and he's decided our podcast is a lesser evil.
Oh, good.
Could you go put that in an Apple review, please, Steve?
The lesser evil. It's not as evil as cigarettes.
He names another problematic thing he does, but he tells me it's a hobby and not an addiction. We won't name that either.
Okay.
Oh, he's a Patreon supporter. Thank you, Steve. But he's added to his donation by sending us he's sending us $110 trillion in Zimbabwean currency.
Have you been to Zimbabwe? It seems like a thing you might have done.
I have not. We've talked about the hyperinflation on the show before, and people have sent us devalued Zimbabwean Reserve Bank of Zimbabwean money.
100 trillion Zimbabwean dollars?
He says we should not use the word fetishization and adjacent so much. That's a very specific complaint.
I think I say fetishization and you say adjacent.
But look, if you're having trouble, I think a guy named Roger wrote a book that may help you out. This guy's going to correct our English, and he thinks that Roget's Thesaurus is written by a guy named Roger. So just for the record, Steve, do you believe his name to be Roger Roget? Why would his parents do that to him? I am tired of this fetishization of the thesaurus and thesaurus adjacent.
I think that I like saying fetishization because it's very hard to say, and I always get in there and put in an extra Z. But we do say fetishization a lot.
Fetishization.
Fetishization.
You just said fetidization as in making something fetid.
Fetidization.
So
like the Omnicron.
I think it's clear that I must say these words and not you. Because...
well, this is the guy that thinks it's Roger's Thesaurus, so...
Maybe he borrowed his friend's Roger's Thesaurus, and he was like, wow, he got his name on the cover in gold and everything. Steve mentioned the Patreon. That's the best way you can support the show. See, we'll let him make We'll let him take good-spirited jabs at our
Sure.
vocabularies
Sure.
because he gives us $10 a month. We have no pride. If you give us $20 a month, you can insult.
We have even less pride.
You could insult our looks. For $50 a month, you could insult our families and sexual performance. And everything's on the table. So go to patreon.com/omnibus project if you're not a supporter, and check out the perks available to donors. In fact, this very entry about the Megavitamin craze was suggested by a listener.
Oh, what is our listener's name?
Kyle supported the Omnibus last year to such a generous degree that he was able to select a show topic of his own. And one of his options was Linus Pauling and vitamin C.
Wow.
And we said,
Kyle.
sold.
Futurelings, from our vantage point in your distant past, we have no idea how long our civilization survived. We hope and pray that the catastrophe we fear may never come. But if the worst comes soon, this recording, like all our recordings, may have been our final word. But if Providence allows, we hope to be back with you soon for another entry in the Omnibus.